Welcome to the October 23rd, 2023 meeting of the Carver School Committee. If everyone could please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It's great to see such a large crowd, and you were all so very quiet. A for being so quiet. That was amazing. We're happy to have all of you here.
I want to start this evening with some recognitions. We want to recognize our students in the district who scored in the exceeding expectations in one or more of their MCAS exams this year. Overall, district-wide, we had a little over 40 students who did that. We're going to break this up over 3 meetings, and this evening we're going to have the opportunity to recognize 14 students. By scoring in the exceeding expectations range, student scores were, depending on their grade level, between the 5th and 10th percentile, maybe 15th percentile of scores in the state. So they were in the top, really on average, probably in the top 10% of all scores in the state, which is tremendous. And then obviously their scores within our school district were very strong. And we want to thank those students and recognize those students for their hard work, for their dedication, and for being really successful in school. So I'd like to begin. We broke it up alphabetically. We figured that was the way that made most sense to do it. So we have students representing all grade levels here this evening. And we also wanted to make sure we didn't bring families in on different nights as we did the recognition. So alphabetically made the most sense. So what we're going to do is I'd like to bring our 14 students up. I will call their name, give them a certificate, ask them to come up in front of the school committee. And once we have all 14 students up, maybe we can take some pictures. And just want to thank all the students for all of their hard work and dedication. So with that, we'd like to begin with first, Zach Arujo, grade 10 English MCAS exam. El Bolio, who scored exceeding in English and math in grade 4. Melina Berkebine, who scored exceeding in grade 10 English. And Melina's got a soccer game tonight. The girls' soccer team's playing away. She said she probably wouldn't make it back in time. We're excited. Madison Bogart, who scored exceeding in grade 4 English. Amelia Brooks, who scored exceeding in grade 6 English and math. Chloe Christian, who scored in grade 10, scored exceeding in English and math. Aiden Clear, who scored exceeding in grade 5 science. Olivia Cornack, who scored exceeding in grade 10 English. Ellie Craig Pelagi, who scored exceeding in grade 4 math. Wyatt DeCarly, who scored exceeding in grade 4 English. Finn Doherty, who scored exceeding in grade 10 English. Autumn Doyle, who scored exceeding in grade 3 English. Kiara Fardy, who scored exceeding in grade 4 math. And Anna Foley, who scored exceeding in grade 10 English. So congratulations to everyone. I don't know if you want to do a picture.
Come on,
Yeah,
we'll smush.
we'll smush.
We'll smush.
Sorry, you can also stand behind.
Wait 1 second.
Right?
Yeah, it's all people in the back.
Excellent, are we ready? Oh, wait, hold on, I'm sorry. It's okay, tell her. Thank you, sorry.
Again, congratulations to all of our students who scored exceeding on their MCAS exams. Great job, everybody.
Very impressive. Very impressive. Yeah. Yes, congratulations, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so that brings us to comments from the EAPC. I believe Tammy's here.
Good evening, everyone. Here I am.
Good evening.
So I just wanted to, this is exciting to see everyone. Lots are happening across the district. We have the workload committee, the health and safety committees meeting, the DEI committee, the health, we're talking about the healthcare, 403Bs in our district. We have the handbook committee and grading committee in our middle high school, and new curriculum and the upper grades and the reading elementary school, and math in the middle school. All of this is additional to what we are doing all in the days. Our students have many opportunities to experience so much, whether it's sports, music, dance, art, drama, arts, and many more. All of this is accomplished because of so many people, adults, and the school committee, administration, teachers, ESPs, nurses, cafeteria workers, bus drivers, and our students. I'd like to take this opportunity to express our gratitude towards the school committee for supporting the Thrive Act. It's important to celebrate the other successes, especially with what we just saw tonight with our students, with their great accomplishment for the MCAS. It's also important to recognize that all successes are not measured the same. Whether we're talking about our winning football team, or we're talking about a student that's going out of their comfort zone, being part of a team. They might not be the one that's winning or playing out on the field, but being part of the team and doing something so much far better, bringing themselves up as well as the other people on their team. So I just want to take this opportunity to say that we do appreciate that, and we appreciate all of the hard work that we're all doing to create all of these experiences for all of our students. Thank you.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks, Tammy.
Thank you, Tammy. I'm not working with the copy. Okay, so that brings us to comments from the student ambassadors. Welcome.
So tonight we're excited to have, give me 1 second. Get the presentation up. All right, and we're pleased to welcome Ella Goldstein, Scarlett Hawes, and Aubrey Wedby to present to us tonight as the student ambassadors. Thanks, girls, for being here.
Great, welcome.
Hi, I'm Aubrey Wedby.
I'm Ella Goldstein.
I'm Scarlett Hawes.
We are student ambassadors from Carver Elementary School, and we want to share some of the great activities happening at our school.
Students were able to meet their teachers, see their classrooms, and get a free spot as they left.
Families were also able to take family photos, which are now hung up around the school.
I love freeze pops. Don't we all, Scarlett?
I do, that's for sure.
This was a great night to meet your teachers and see your classroom. And to get freeze pops.
Our school motto is,
We are just what the world needs. This motto is so
heartwarming.
It makes me feel like I'm really important.
Me too.
Me 4. Oh, never mind. Me 3.
We all have the ability to make a difference in the world.
We have a school book called Change Sings, and our amazing music teacher, Miss Cramp, has made a song from Change Sings book that we'll show you.
5, 6, 7, 8.
Change things where inside of me, because I'm the change I want to see. As I grow, it grows like seeds. I am just what the world needs.
This book may be a children's book, but it has an important message.
The message is that even one person can make a difference in the world.
Bonus block is an extra special that kids get to have after breakfast.
Sometimes in technology, we play games like checkers and other board games. In music, we play theater games, and in PE, we run the track or do cup stacking.
We have so many extra specials that make us more talented in different areas. Dr. P says that while we're in bonus block, our teachers are working together to discuss lessons and make sure everyone has what they need to be successful students.
The entire kindergarten went on a field trip to visit a cranberry bog behind the school.
Did you know that Carver is known for cranberries?
My little sister loves cranberry juice.
Look how cute they are. It looks like the kindergarten kids had a great time.
I'm so sad because I was sick during the fun run.
I'm sorry. I wish you could have been there, Scarlett.
I know. Everyone loves me and wishes I was there.
The weather was great and the people were so nice. We raised over $30,000 in donations to go towards Carver Elementary School.
People really got to express who they were cheering for by wearing clothes with their favorite team or player.
I like the Bruins and the Patriots, mostly the Patriots.
We used to love the Patriots, but when Tom Brady left the team, we felt ditched.
It's okay, Scarlett. It's okay, Scarlett. Honestly, I prefer Celtics.
Have a great evening.
And remember, above all,
Be kind.
Great job. I know that I don't plan on singing this evening. I don't know. I don't know if everybody else does, but so thank you very much to our student ambassadors. Great presentation.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. We always love having our student ambassadors come share the wonderful things that are happening at the elementary school. So thank you all for being here, bringing us all joy. Okay, so that brings us to comments from the general public. So I'm not sure if there's anyone in the room that would like to speak. If you are, if you could just come up to the table so you can speak into the microphone to be recognized. We do have some people that are attending on Zoom. If there's anyone on Zoom that would like to participate in public comment, please just type your name in the chat to be recognized. Okay, so seeing no movement in the microphone and no names in the chat, we shall move on. One thing I just remembered,
So
Scott.
we should just give the chat one more chance, just because I just realized that I had not enabled the chat.
Oh, okay.
For those at home. So maybe they were putting their names in, but
And
they
just
were
couldn't
not.
see it?
We just
Okay.
couldn't see it, but now it is enabled. Now they can.
Okay, great. So if there's anyone that's on Zoom that would like to be recognized to speak, you can now please put your name into the chat. And also, I just want to remind everyone, this meeting will also be held virtually in accordance with the Governor of Massachusetts March 20th, 2020 order, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, GLC 30A, Section 20. Members of the public can access the meeting online with the following information. I think we forgot that at the beginning.
Yes,
It
we
just
forgot
popped
that
into
at the
my
beginning.
head, so.
Yeah.
So now that bit of housekeeping is done, has anyone entered their name into the chat?
No, we still have not had anybody enter their name into the
Alrighty
chat.
then, so that means we shall move on to the approval of minutes for the October 2nd, 2023 open session minutes.
I move that we approve the minutes for the October 2nd, 2023 open session meeting minutes.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay, so next, that brings us to communications. Are
So
any?
there, we do not have any new communications for this evening.
Okay, so we'll move on to reports from the superintendent and personnel updates.
Okay, very good, thank you. So we have had a little bit of movement since our last meeting. We've had several new hires. Catherine Miller as an ESP in special education. Megan Quirk as our drug-free communities coordinator. I guess I just wanted to note that that's a position we've been having a little bit of trouble to hire, so we're
Yeah.
excited that Megan's on board. And we're actually going to invite her to our November 13th meeting.
Oh, great.
Just for the committee to meet her.
That would be
and
great.
Talk a little bit about, and just so the community understands what the role of the drug-free grant coordinator will be. So we'll do that at our next meeting a little bit. Rose Broom as a lunch monitor at the elementary school. Alexander Carrera as a long-term substitute in MET at the middle high school for Mr. Aruda. Benjamin Vitale as a long-term sub teacher in physical education at the high school. Amanda Whitaker as a long-term sub ESP at the elementary school. Lauren Savoy as a long-term sub adjustment counselor at the elementary school. Kimberly Scott as an ESP special education at the middle high school. And several of our long-term subs are actually for maternity leaves. So that's been a little contagious this spring, this fall.
Yeah.
And then we did have one resignation since we last met. Hunter Cedatoff as a custodian, as a partial shift custodian at the middle high school. He did the swing shift, that in-between shift.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to reports from the Student Advisory Council.
Hi, everyone. I also will not be singing. I'm sorry. Maybe I'll set that up for next time. But a lot has been happening at the middle high school since the start of school this August. We kicked off the year with each grade having a class meeting where Mrs. Cabral introduced the vision of the graduate, which you were all informed about last time. Some teachers have worked it into the curriculum, creating assignments to help students become even more familiar with it, and I think a lot of students have really enjoyed that. There have been a few field trips so far this year, with the first one being the senior duck boats trip. Everyone had a great time learning about the history of Boston on this timeless tour, and afterwards students got to go off and explore Boston with their friends. The Friday before last, the juniors went on the Salem trip. They walked around the town and got to look at all of the different spooky sites, as well as learn about the town's history at the Salem Witch Museum. They rounded off the trip with a visit to Canopy Lake Park at nighttime for Screamfest. And then moving on to the middle school, about a month ago, grades 6 through 8 had the opportunity to visit Sawchuck Farm, where they got to try and find their way out of a corn maze, as well as do other fun things like bouncing on the jumping pillows. The 6th grade trip also had their trip to Camp Burgess for the first time this year, where they stayed overnight and participated in bonding activities. Jumping back to the seniors, they had their first dance of the year back in September, the senior dinner dance, and everyone had a lot of fun dancing and laughing together, plus we got a lot of great pictures for the yearbook that Katie Blotner and Sarah Gould have been working on. Big thank you to Mr. McGinnis for requesting some Taylor Swift songs. And then this past week was Homecoming Spirit Week for both the middle school and the high school students, and it was the Student Council's first big school-wide event of the year. We started off Monday with a classic pajama day, and then we all took a metaphorical trip to the beach for Tropical Tuesday. Wednesday was a Barbie and Ken Pink Out in support of breast cancer awareness, and Friday was Starry Night themed, as was voted on by the senior class. We also had a pep rally, which was a huge success, with everyone showing a lot of school spirit. And then the homecoming game was also on Friday night, and it had a red, white, and blue theme. And then the dance was on Saturday with the Starry Night theme again. Before the football game, the Student Council actually hosted the first and hopefully annual tailgate event, where high school students got together in the student parking lot for snacks, drinks, and games before the big game, and it sounded like a lot of people enjoyed it. On the topic of Student Council, both the e-board and the other members have been working hard fundraising money for both in-school events and for the CMASC Winter Conference, which Carver High School is actually going to be hosting this year. And so far, we've had a car wash, multiple bake sales, and collected donations at some sporting events to hopefully fund these things. And the group has a lot more in store for Carver Middle High School this year. Overall, I'd say the start of the school year was a success, and I look forward to sharing more about what goes on as the year progresses with you.
All right,
Great.
thank you very much.
Thank you. It's great to hear about so many fun, wonderful events.
Good job.
Great job. Thank you very much. Okay, so that brings us to culinary renovation project.
Yes, another exciting.
Very exciting.
Presentation this evening. So yeah, we're excited that we're going to be moving forward with the culinary project, and Ron's going to kind of take us through and give us an update on where the project stands.
Excellent, thank you.
I'll leave it. Can you hear me okay? It's close enough, okay. Yeah, so it's been a long process, but we're excited that we finally have the project moving underway. And what I thought I'd do tonight is just take a few minutes to give you an update, kind of give you a refresher on where we started and all the way through to where we are today. So just starting with the background, why we're doing this project. We've got this really incredible, like award-winning program. You see pictured there, Chef with some of his students that won the state championship a few years ago. They've won several years, different championships here with Culinary. But they've been really doing it with a makeshift kitchen, old donated equipment from a variety of different schools around the state. And it's really set up as a home ec space that he has made into this culinary space, you know. So it's been a long-standing vision of his and of the school to try to renovate and update that space. And so a few years ago, we embarked on this process to think about what the vision would look like and how we get the funding and then ultimately what our renovation would be. So it starts back in spring of 2021. We had a team of staff, Mr. Neef, Chef, myself, and a few other folks went out to a couple of different schools in our region to just see what's out there. What does industry standard culinary education look like? And what elements could we bring into the Carver vision, sort of bring up our standard of equipment? Using that information, we engaged with a design firm. We said, look, you know, here's what we're looking for based on some of these great elements around the Commonwealth. Can you design like an initial design? It's called schematic design. And then how much would all of that great stuff cost? And so that picture you see on the right was the schematic design. Came in a little over 1.5 million, essentially had two phases, a kitchen renovation and a cafe, like a community cafe where kiddos can, you know, share their creations with the rest of Carver. So we said, great, 1.5 million, let's go find a way to find money for that now. And so we applied for a grant, and we also took a look at some other options. Ultimately, we weren't awarded that grant, spring of 2022. So we said, okay, we don't have this federal money, this state money coming in. Let's narrow some of the scope. So we broke into two phases, and we said, phase one, let's focus on the kitchen. Let's make that our priority. That's where the magic happens. That's where the education happens. We'll think about phase two at a later date. So fall 2022, we planned a couple of different means to pay for that. I think we did a presentation here with the committee at that point where we had like plan A, plan B, plan C. It included applying for the grant, it included ARPA money, it included local monies. We were trying to cobble it together to find a way to make this happen for Carver Middle High School. Winter, we put out an RFQ to start soliciting some design, so some formal design for the entire project. In the spring, we found out that we were not awarded that state grant, which was a disappointment, but that we ultimately were awarded the ARPA funds. So the town has some ARPA funds that can be used for projects like this because it includes HVAC and some other things that are sort of within that ARPA envelope. So between the ARPA funds and some local funds, we're able to pull together the funding we need to focus on phase one, the kitchen only, right? So that brings us to summer 2023. We completed the design. Posted that IFB to see if we could get folks to do this project for us. Did some sort of value engineering when the initial costs came in to save some money to make sure we stayed within budget ultimately. Nice. But I'm happy to say that here we are in the fall of 2023. All the bids were in. We've awarded the contract for the GC to Page Construction. We just had our kickoff meeting last week. And so we're planning for construction to be right at the end of this month. And it's got a 90-day window. So that brings us right to the very beginning of February, end of January, early February. You see on the right-hand side sort of the breakout of your costs, a combination again of some ARPA funding, some local funding that was already designated for this kind of a project. Altogether, your cost for this project ends up being just under 1.2 million, focused entirely on the kitchen renovation. And what that should give us is an industry standard kitchen. And so Chef and his students can continue doing that magic and do it in a way that lets them leverage some really cool equipment that students would otherwise see in professional kitchens, hopefully when they go out into the world and go into careers focused on culinary. So that gives you a sense of where we stand. The last slide is just an executive summary of the dates, so you can see the process to date. We're really excited. Chef is super excited. I was talking with him this morning about it. He pulled me aside. He said, he was tentative, I think, through the entire process, wondering if at some point it wouldn't work. And he's excited to see that we'll be breaking ground shortly. And I'll give you an update as we continue through the process. And thank you all for your support, the community for their support for this project. And hopefully in a few months, he'll be cranking out some wonderful dinners and desserts and snacks and all those things we can share with you.
That's
I'm
amazing.
happy to answer any questions you have about the project. And yeah, we'll keep you updated.
Exciting. Right? Anyone have any questions?
Did they deliver?
Maybe they should start.
We could use some snacks, why not?
School
Right?
committee snack options, yeah.
Especially for our longer meetings.
Right?
Absolutely. Well, thank you also for all of your hard work and your due diligence. And I know that a lot of people have been involved in this project, so thank you to everyone. We're super excited. Thank you for the update.
Is Page local?
So they're relatively, they're out of Stoughton.
Okay.
They're a Massachusetts company.
Very cool.
Great. Thank you so much. Okay, my apologies.
And there's no other questions, I'll move on to the October 1 enrollment and talk a little bit about the student exit survey from last year. We
Okay.
tend to tie those two concepts together. So just as a reminder, is really a way to always have a standard number to measure our enrollment. The state requires that every school district on October 1, October 1st, count every student that is a member of the school district. And then ultimately that number establishes technically what our student population would be considered for federal and state grants. Because they want it to always be in a consistent place. Because ultimately your enrollment's always shifting. It's always going up and down. There's always a little bit in and out. So on any given day, our enrollment may be up a few students or down a few students. I'd be surprised the amount of shifting that occurs. But the October 1 number establishes a firm date of comparison over time. So that's what we historically do, is we do a comparison over time from October 1 to October 1. So our total enrollment for October 1st this year was 1,526 students, which is actually down 9 students from last October 1st. And our trend data over time is that we're actually fairly stable. We had dipped under 1,500 for a short period of time. There was a couple of years where we were in the 1490s, and then we had a little period prior to the pandemic where we grew up a little bit and grew back towards this 1,535 number. We've been around that 1,530, 1,540 number for the past several years. Our entering kindergarten class this year was unusually small, so we only have 100 students. So we typically have 115 to 120 students enroll in kindergarten. So if we had a typical enrollment, our October 1 number would be close to 1546, which would be very close to where we were last year. So we did have 27 fewer students in the 9th grade class, but that's typical in terms of our movement from students having the options for vocational schools, private schools, and making some of those choices. That was actually a lower number than the previous year. The previous year, that number was actually a little high, and we had some concerns about that. The 27 was a more typical number of our transition from 8th to 9th grade. Otherwise, our movement from grade level to grade level is actually fairly typical and fairly standard. So the big picture is that we're flat. We're not growing as a school district. The only place where that, obviously we'd always like to have the opportunity to grow. And where that becomes a factor a little bit is when we start looking at the Chapter 70 funding, and we'll talk about this through the budget process, that maintains us what's considered to be a hold harmless district. So in essence, if you actually go back 15 years, our enrollment has declined. And the way Chapter 70 funding works, it's based on student enrollment. It's actually a per pupil expenditure or a per pupil allocation. And this was happening across Massachusetts, it wasn't only Carver. So there were many school districts that in the past 10 to 15 years, the population has actually dipped. Massachusetts' overall population has actually stayed pretty steady, but our population in the state of Massachusetts has aged. So if we start looking at demographic data, there's less students in the state of Massachusetts. So what the state established is they said, for those districts that are declining or that are losing population, we're not going to punish you. You're not going to lose Chapter 70 funding. We're going to hold you harmless, and you're just going to get the basic increase. And the reason why I mention this is that there are some districts that are growing and have actually had some growth. And districts that are growing through the Student Opportunity Act, these are all things we've talked about before over the last couple of years. The Student Opportunity Act is funding that's based on some factors. But one of those biggest factors is your growth in population. And those districts that are held harmless, that aren't back to their same level of student population as 10 or 15 years ago, just get the minimum aid increase. And they haven't seen a huge growth in Chapter 70 funding. So it has become a little bit, and I understand it makes sense. I can explain to the community why it makes sense. But we also have to be aware that there are communities around us that have actually had growth, and they've actually seen a huge increase in their Chapter 78.
Right.
And so those districts are all of a sudden bringing in a large increase in monies. Then people might be saying, well, why is District A getting all this additional state aid, but Carver is not? And ultimately, it comes back to our student enrollment, is that we're still considered a held harmless district. We haven't had the growth back to where we were. And I should actually get the date in the sand, the date that you said. I'm looking wrong because I don't know if he knows, in terms of what year they go back to, in terms of what your population would be. But we're fairly significantly under that number. We'd have to have a growth of a couple hundred students in population to get above that number. So there are some other places through the Student Opportunity Act where you increase your funding based on your low-income students, based on your EL population, and we've actually had some growth in those areas. So this past year, our Chapter 70 funding actually went up a little bit more than the base rate of $25 or $30 per student, and we'll talk more about that as we get into the budget process. But we haven't seen a huge increase that other districts have seen, but it's solely based on this number. So they use this October 1 number as your number for your population as they make all these decisions going forward. And ultimately, the big picture is that we're fairly flat overall. Since we did have some concerns about students leaving the district and students making a decision to seek other educational alternatives, the last several years we've done a student exit survey. We did that last year, so I'll show you some of the data from the student exit survey compared to some of the data from last year. And that's something we'll continue to do. We ask every family that leaves the district to complete the survey. Not all families do. There's nothing to hold them to do it. But we actually had 57 responses, which I actually think is a pretty healthy response in terms of the survey. So as part of the survey, families are given a range of options as to why they're looking to seek a different educational alternative. And in case the committee doesn't remember, at our next meeting in November, I will actually do a report of kind of what's called the student attending report. We have a responsibility to identify every student who's school aged within Carver and what school they go to. So we actually do a breakdown of every student in Carver and what school they attend in Massachusetts, or virtually in other parts of the country. So we'll be able to identify every student. And then we look at that trend data too and say, do we see a shift towards homeschool? Or do we see a shift towards private school or charter schools? So next month we'll have all that data broken down. We don't have it tonight because we actually have to hear from all of those schools. And it's actually, we're part of that as well. So for example, our school choice students who attend here, we have to notify their school districts that they're attending here. So everybody has to kind of send their reports to each other after October 1, and then we have to collate all that data, and we'll look at that the next meeting. So this is the range of options that families have to select for their reason or their rationale for why they're leaving the district. And they can select more than one option. So some families select multiple options, some families select only one. From my perspective, the thing that's the most important data here, what I'd like to see is what I see here, which is the two highest for the reasons for leaving are voc tech education. Some families just make the decision that Old Colony is the direction they want to go in based on their possible career path. Or the second highest response here is they were moving. They moved out of the district. They no longer live in Carver and have decided to go someplace else. So what I did, I wanted to do a comparison to last year, and I actually think we've had some positive shifts here. So looking at this next slide, the gray is families' responses last year compared to the cranberry, which is the families' responses this year. And last year we had some concerns. We were concerned that 25 families said that the reason why they left was based on curriculum offerings. We were concerned that 15 families said they were leaving based on peer interactions, and some references and concerns about bullying. We were concerned that 31 students decided to take a vocational technical path. That seemed a little high compared to what we would normally see. And I'll say this again when we do this presentation in November. Historically, if you go back over time, back into the 90s, Carver's always had 90 to 100 students at Old Colony. I think it's very appropriate that we have 90 to 100 students in Old Colony. That means, on average, 20 to 25 kids per class are going to leave and attend Old Colony, and that's pretty consistent. Our number this year was very consistent with that number. As I said, we had 27 freshmen pick some other alternative, and not all of that was Old Colony. I can't remember what Old Colony's number was exactly. I don't remember if it was 22 or 23, but that's very consistent with what we said. You know, obviously last year 31, and I think the actual number who went to some vocation was 34. That we were a little concerned about that number last year. You know, so in terms of the overall responses, comparing it back to last year, I do think that this survey data is in a more positive light for the school district in terms of rationale, you know, with obviously people moving out of the district being one of the number one reasons why they selected it. And obviously we're happy to see that some of the areas like elective offerings, athletic programs, you know, all those numbers seemed high to us last year. And a lot of those numbers have come down. And last year we had 54 families respond to the survey. This year we had 57. So our response rate was pretty consistent in terms of overall. So we're happy to see some of those trends. A couple other things I will mention, because we've looked at this before, and I want to give the opportunity again to talk about our online bullying reporting form. So all the students who complete this survey, there's two comment sections, and all the survey data is in the school committee members' background. I don't know if you had the opportunity to look at that. You can look at everybody's individual responses. You know, 4 out of the 57 respondents mentioned bullying in their comments in some way. And as I said, 10 selected peer relations, but that's actually down from what our response was from last year. But I also want to note that, you know, 10 out of 57 respondents made some sort of positive comment about their experience with the Carver Public Schools, the teachers in the Carver Public Schools. 20 out of 57 respondents made no comments at all. So they didn't make a comment, they just checked one of these boxes as to why they were leaving. I mentioned the bullying piece again, just to promote that concept of we have developed an online bullying reporting form. So if anybody does have any kind of concern that they feel like needs to be addressed, if they go to our website, it's very clearly labeled, both at the elementary school and the middle high school, and families can complete that online form about concerns. And then the last piece is just kind of a breakdown of where did families go. So those students who left the district, you have the breakdown of their percentages. The highest percentage was the 37.5 going to a voc tech, and then second highest was 27% going to another public. Most likely those families transitioning to another public school were our families who were moving out of the district. 17.9% chose to go to a charter school, and 10.7% to a private school. And I think you'll see that in our next report, that's pretty consistent, somewhat consistent with what our breakdown is of where students are. You know, where this graph is actually fairly consistent of what we'll see with the data next month when we look at our X percentage are vocational school, X percentage are charter schools, of our students who live in Carver but don't attend the Carver public schools. So there was nothing in this data that was atypical or showed us, oh, that's something we need to be concerned about or look at that's different than it's been in the past. So that a very short kind of overall summary about our October 1 number, with the key takeaways being that our overall enrollment is flat, and that our student movement this past year was more consistent with previous years, where, as I said last year, we were concerned that it was a little high. And I actually felt the overall the survey results were more positive in terms of overall, in terms of people's reasonings and rationales. And then I'll take any questions people have about October 1 or student exit survey data.
I Thank you for presenting that. I do have a few questions. Does administration at either building or both buildings reach out to families based on their responses to the survey?
This year we have not.
Okay.
Last year we did.
Okay.
And last year we actually had, it was Mrs. Maestas actually called several families based upon just to get some more information as to why they're making their decision. I will say the exit survey can be confidential, so families do not have to respond and put their names in. So sometimes we don't know who the respondents are.
Right.
So in some cases we do know who the respondents are, in some cases we do not.
Yes, I was asking because a community member had mentioned to me that they were disappointed that they didn't hear from anyone based on their responses in their exit survey. So I just wanted to bring that point up so that
Okay.
people could know if it was a district-wide decision, if it wasn't just that particular family that wasn't reached out to. Because I did go through the responses, and I mean, some of them are really tough to read. So I just wanted to ask. And I guess since I'm talking about it, I will just take this opportunity to please remind students, families, guardians, that if their child is having an issue in school, to please reach out to either administration or guidance or a teacher that your student has a good relationship with, to ask for help. Because our school staff cares about every single student that is in our buildings, and they're there to help. But they can't help if they don't know if something's happening. So I just want to encourage people to please take that leap of faith. I know sometimes it could be scary. You could be, concerned about retaliation or something along those lines, but I can tell you that every single staff member is there to support you and your student. So I just encourage you to please reach out and ask for help. Because everyone needs a little help every once in a while, and like I said, we even as school committee members can't implement policy to help improve things if we don't know what's going on. So sorry to get on my soapbox there for a minute, but I just want people to understand that we really do have a caring staff with every single person, and everyone's there to help. So please just reach out, use that online anonymous bullying form if that's what you're comfortable with, but please do share your concerns. So thank you, Scott.
Any other questions?
Nope.
All right, so ready to move on to SAT and AP scores. We're happy to have
Yes,
Mrs.
please.
Cabral here with us this evening, who's going to do an overview of our scores on both SATs and AP exams last year.
Excellent. Welcome, Mrs. Cabral.
Good evening. Thank you. Happy to be here. So I'm going to start just sharing a little bit of data on our SAT scores. So the numbers that you're looking at in this graph, they factor in all of our graduating seniors' highest test scores. So some students choose to take the SAT multiple times. Their highest score is factored into these averages. And when you look at the chart, you'll see Carver is in red, and in both reading and writing and mathematics, our students exceeded the national averages. And in reading and writing in particular, we were close to the state average, and also close in mathematics. Overall, Massachusetts tends to have the highest SAT scores in the nation, so our students are nearly meeting that expectation. Some other numbers that I wanted to share with you is the scores improved over last year's scores, SAT scores. So in reading and writing last year, we were at a 543, and this year we're at a 557. Last year in math, we were at a 528, and now we're at a 533. So we're showing some growth in the right direction. And also would like to note that prior to the pandemic, our scores were close. So we were at 560 in reading and writing prior to the pandemic, and now we're at 557. And in math, likewise, we were 550 in math, and now we're in a 533. So it's nice to see that we're trending back toward where we were prior to the pandemic as far as that's concerned. And also wanted to note that our SAT scores reflect a little bit differently on our student growth than maybe our MCAS scores did that we reviewed at our last meeting. So if you go to the next slide, the advanced placement. So again, you'll notice that there's an increase in student participation and a great increase in the number of AP exams we're administering. So clearly, students are taking and enrolling in multiple AP classes. So we like to see that they're investing in these rigorous courses. If you look at the scores, so students who score 3 or higher, 3, 4, or 5, some colleges will accept those courses for college credit. So, because 3+ is considered a passing score. So we had 47 scores of 3 or higher, which 36% of our exam scores were 3 or higher. So we'd like to see that number increase, but we're happy to see that. In some of our innovation pathways, if you're going to complete a pathway, some of those paths are required that you enroll in an AP course. So that's part of why we're seeing the increase. And again, that's a positive for us because we like to see these students are now enrolling in more rigorous coursework, and that makes them maybe better prepared if they pursue a college career after high school. So now I have some slides. I'll briefly go through each of the results of our tests. And as we go through it, you'll see we're up and down. We're a little bit all over the place. We have some real highs, and we have some places where we'd like to see the scores be a little bit higher. So I'm going to start with language and composition. So this is our junior English AP course.
Slides are a
Sorry.
little out of different order.
Oh, no.
That was biology first.
Biology is first.
So, all right, so I changed them around on mine tonight.
Oh, okay.
So I can go to biology
We
first.
can go to yours.
Do you,
Yeah, we just find
I just put them together in subject.
So that's easy enough.
So do you want to go to, so the
and
language
comp.
were the last originally.
Yep.
So language and comp. Thank you, Scott. So first, language and comp. So this is our junior AP English course. And the scores did go down a little bit this year, but you can see that we're still comparable to the state and global averages in that.
I guess the only other thing I'd point out is similar to the MCAS scores, in general, Massachusetts AP scores are also tend to be extremely high or on the high end. They're generally almost always going to outperform the global, because AP scores, AP tests are not just taken in the United States, taken across the country, across the world. That's why they're reported as global scores and not national scores. And usually Massachusetts is very competitive in terms of their scores. So if we're scoring above the state average and the global average in a specific area, that's a real strength.
And then Scott, I think if you go down, I think the next slide is literature and comp. Yes. So this is our senior AP English course. We are very proud of these scores. These are the best scores that we've ever had. Okay. So every student that took the test received a 3 or higher in this exam, and that's the first time I believe that has ever happened for us. So we're very proud of those scores.
That's great.
Um,
Where are you going to next?
I'm going to European history, and I think you need to back up.
Can you find them all?
I'm sorry, I thought it would, if you, okay, thank you. So European history, so across the state, it varies. Students in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, depending on what district you're in, may elect to take this course. So here at Carver Middle High School, our 10th grade students take this AP course. So these scores could be, are accounted to other districts where maybe the kids are 2 years older, a little bit more mature in their career. But overall, for considering that some of these students, this is their first AP course they've ever taken, we're satisfied with the results of this. They're kind of right there with the state and the global. And then I went to history, sticking with history, I went to US history, Scott. There you go. So, as I said, we're all over the place, up and down, but there's a reason why this is so down. So we had extremely low enrollment for this course last year. There were only 4 students who were enrolled in this course. So we didn't have enough students enrolled to run it, but we still gave them the option if they wanted to take this course, they could do it virtually. So they did take it virtually. And in general, students don't do as well in virtual class as they would in person. So I think that we can kind of understand why there was a drop in that score. But we're happy to say that we are running the AP US History course this year in building, and so we expect that this will look great next year. And then I went to psychology, Scott. And again, clearly, we're below the state and global average on this, but we are showing growth in this course. The students did show some growth, and maybe even a little more growth than the state and global. But again, we have some great moments here and some areas we obviously want to see get a little bit better.
And this was our most popular course. So this is the course that students
Oh, a
access
lot
the
of-
most. I think.
I don't know what the
I
enrollment
think it was
was.
37 students took AP Psychology. So there are some students that they only take one AP course. This is the AP course they take.
Then statistics, Scott.
It's the next slide.
All right. Now I'm off. US History, Psychology, sorry.
We did psych, right?
We did psychology, physics, but I'll do statistics because we're here.
Yeah.
So we do offer AP Calculus and statistics, but most students do not take both, so they choose to take one or the other. And again, we do need to see more improvement in this, but it is similar growth to what the state and global averages had. And calculus. And in general, our students in calculus have tended to score very well, and it's very strong. So we did see a little bit of a dip in this area, but in the end, they average close to the state and global averages as well. And we really do anticipate that we will see growth in this next year as well. And then I would go to computer science. Now, computer science, this is the first year that we have run this course. So I'll run the AP exam. So we're really quite pleased with the results of this, being the first time we've offered the course and the students participated in this exam. You can see that we scored both higher than the state and global averages in that. And then biology, there's only 2 more.
Biology was first.
And I think that they were down near the end. So again, we're very pleased with the results of our biology students. This is the first time, again, we've ever had this happen. Everyone who took the exam scored a 3 or higher, so we're pleased with those results. And that also was the highest score we've ever had. And then the last one is AP Environmental, Scott. You're doing a great job, thank you. I'm sorry I messed this up. And again, we scored higher than both the state and global averages. This is the strongest score we've had in recent times. And I also want to note in 2022, they did not run, an AP exam was not administered last year or the year prior. Because they were realigning the test, so no one participated in that exam. They were realigning it to meet this curriculum and the standards.
There wasn't just a massive drop. And everybody no one
rebounded
scored,
the
no
year
one scored a
after.
3 or higher in the whole world. No one scored a 3 or higher.
But that being noted, Scott, we did show the greatest improvement between 2021 and 2023,
absolutely.
where if you looked at the state and global, just going from 21 to 23, it didn't show as much growth. But I do think I'll end on, I think it's our next meeting, we're going to be sharing our MCAS action plan, which teachers, we worked on that with a variety of teachers and department chairs and administration. Scott and Meredith joined us for our half-day PD, and we're continuing our work with that through department chairs. And so the action plan is really, we're close to being done with that. So I know where we're going with this next meeting, but I do think that the steps that we'll share with you at our next presentation will also benefit the results of our SAT scores in the future and our AP classwork, because the kids will have some challenges, some rigor, and I think we'll see an improvement overall.
Great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Christine. Any questions or thoughts?
That's a lot of AP. That's a lot of AP exams.
A lot of
That's a
APs,
lot of. That's
I
a
know.
lot of hard work. So kudos to those students who challenge themselves at that level. That's a lot to undertake. Thank you for sharing all that data. Does anyone have any questions? All right. Thank you so much, Mrs. Cabral.
Thank you, Christine.
Okay, so that brings us to upcoming events.
Yeah, I'll just take a minute to put them up on the
So
screen,
much.
give people opportunity to view our upcoming events. I won't necessarily read through everything. Though I will point out that I know that Trunk or Treat is a particularly well-attended event at the elementary school. That's coming up on the 27th. From 5:30 is the sensory piece, and then 6 to 7 is the full Trunk or Treat experience. So I'm sure everybody's looking forward to that.
Cannot wait.
And then it's amazing when you get into November already. Things are moving quickly. The Thanksgiving football game is at home this year, so that is a home game at
Yes.
10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
And always we invite everybody back, our alumni from last year's graduating class, to a breakfast the day prior. And otherwise, I'll just take a second to give people the opportunity to look at our upcoming events.
That's great. It's crazy to think that we're talking about the Thanksgiving Day football game already.
And I guess I will also point out that we do have no school on the 10th for Veterans Day. I think so I know that the town, for example, Town Hall has decided to use the Monday as the holiday. So the 13th is the holiday for Town Hall, the 10th is the holiday for the schools. And I think school districts have done different things with it. I think some school districts have done Friday, some school districts have done Monday, and I think some of the school districts have not taken any day. Because technically under the, we talked about this when we did the calendar last year, but technically under the Massachusetts regulations, if Veterans Day falls on a Saturday, there's not a state holiday on Monday or Friday. So it's just individual choice. So just I'll point out that we are, for us, it's the Friday is our no school day. Oh, and then also, since that, the 13th was supposed to be our next school committee meeting, but since the town hall is closed on that day, we're gonna have to pick an ulterior location for our next school committee meeting. So we will not be here on the 13th. So really, I guess we can talk about this now. Would the committee like to change the date or just pick a different location? My suggestion would be to pick a different location rather than change the date, but we cannot use town hall on the 13th. My thoughts on location, we haven't done a meeting at the elementary school. We could do something at the elementary school in the cafeteria, or we could do the library at the middle high school, or we could do the auditorium in the middle high school. I'll also mention that the sound configuration is just difficult. We don't have the setup in those other locations to do the Zoom. That's why we use this room with our Zoom setup. So if the meeting on the 13th will probably just be an in-person meeting without a Zoom option. Unless you decide to pick a different date and be in this room and do the Zoom option. So I don't know, what's the thoughts of the committee?
I think our calendar is pretty tight. I really don't think we have much room to pick a different day. Could Area 58 still record at the elementary school?
Yes, I'll speak, not speaking for Chris, but I'll speak for Chris. I'll say yes, that they'll be available and still record.
We get a
and-
nod yes from Chris? Okay, we get a thumbs up from
I think-
Chris, so thank
Chris, I think
you.
the only distinction is that if we go in the auditorium, they can broadcast live.
Okay, right.
So they cannot broadcast live from any other place in the district.
Okay.
But if we're in the auditorium, they can broadcast the meeting live that evening. Otherwise, it would be on tape and played on Area 58 later on.
I don't think we.
I know the auditorium's not the greatest, that's the only positive, the auditorium is Area 58
Yeah.
can go live.
I'd like to try the
Right.
elementary school.
I would love
too.
to have one at the elementary school. So,
What do you guys think?
Katie, what do you think? Up for it?
Great.
All
All
right.
right, well, we'll work on elementary
Super
school
exciting.
for the 13th in the cafeteria.
That'd be fun.
Great. Right? We'll have to make sure we have student ambassadors. Can we have them again? Or is it too soon?
They tend to do every other meeting.
was gonna say, yeah,
But
I
maybe
know.
since it's in their building. maybe
It's in
we
their
can
building,
convince
yeah,
them to
maybe
come.
they might
I'll
want
reach
to.
out and see if I can get them to come.
Or maybe chorus could sing, like something.
Of course, just started though.
Do they?
Yeah.
Anyway.
Like it's
So
couple weeks
I'll
ago.
It'll be
reach out-
great to be there.
I know, I'll reach out to elementary school since we're gonna be in their building
Yeah.
and come up with something for them to do, see if they're interested.
Excellent. Thank you. Super exciting. All right, why is my mouse was just going crazy. I apologize. Okay, so that brings us to recommendations from the superintendent and the financial update with the FY '24 budget transfers. So take it away, Ron.
Thank you. So if you take a look at your financial memo, there's not a whole lot of updates from Washington or Beacon Hill that would impact Carver. But you do see your FY '24 end of the first financial quarter warrants. So you get your payroll warrants and your expenses down to the penny as always. And at the end of this, I'd ask that you kindly vote those in for us. And we also have on the second page your grants. So we're trying to update you on any grants that come in. We did a large majority of your entitlement grants early in the year. That's typically when they all get approved. We do have a new grant that's coming, that's arriving. It's a state appropriation for comprehensive school health services for $15,000. And if you remember at the end of last year, so after the budget was approved, the committee decided to go forward with an additional nursing staff,
Yep.
sort of outside of the budget. But this grant will help offset some of those costs. So
Great.
if that's part of your vote today, then we'll use those funds to start offsetting some of those costs for the additional nurse. Yeah, and I'll show you the budget and transfers if we can. So in your Excel file, as always, you've got two tabs there. The first is your overall budget, Q1, fiscal Q1, and then your second tab is the transfers. Typically, I just dive right into the transfers. You can peruse the budget at your leisure, but I might take a couple minutes today to give you a few highlights that I want to bring to your attention as a committee. So if you take a look at, there's 3 lines I want to bring your attention to, if I can. The first is row 154. Scott, if you can scroll to that for us. So 154 is your account for nurse salaries from middle high school. As I just mentioned, that account is going to be over right now because we need that grant to offset it. In addition to that, you had, after the budget sort of agreed to shift from a health assistant to a full-time nurse. So you see a line right below it. Once we have those grants funds, we'll take the grant funds plus what was the health assistant and roll that up to offset your nursing cost. You'll see that you're still going to have a delta there, though. And so we're going to roll that delta through the end of the year and then use any additional end-of-year funds to sort of offset that and balance that at the end of the year. That's not typical, but anytime we have an addition outside of the budget process, that's sort of how we do it to offset some large costs like that. There's 2 other that I want to bring to your attention that are also going to be rolled for now, at least through the spring. The next one is row 165, and it's special education transportation. So a little context for this, you'll see that this account currently is projected to be over. A little bit about what our process is this time of year. After the first financial quarter, what we do is we take all of our projected costs, all of our salary projected costs after the summer hiring is all done, all of our contract projected costs, if any new contracts are in, all of our special education tuitions once the year has completed and we've started the new school year. And we say, okay, what are those projected costs? And we project them out, we earmark them, what's called an encumbrance. And so what you see there is an encumbrance for special education transportation. That's transportation for kiddos who have severe special needs, severe disabilities, and that ultimately live here in Carver, but are tuitioned to either private or public institutions to get their services. Right now, you can see that's going to be flagged for what we call the Special Education Reserve at the end of the year. So what will happen is that's our current projection. That may fluctuate throughout the year. Kiddos may need to get transportation. Some kiddos may come off the transportation. But at the end of the fiscal year, whatever funds we have remaining in your entire budget, we'll use to offset those costs. Anything that's left, so any other additional costs that we have, will go to the Special Education Reserve. A reminder about the reserve. Most communities, like Carver, set aside some funds in a special education reserve. It's just smart planning. Special education services and tuitions fluctuate up and down. Each year in February, we draw a line in the sand during the budget process and say, hey, at this point in the budget process, these are the projected students that we know are going to be needing special education services. Anything outside of that will cover for a one-time cost using the special education reserves and then build into our future budgets. Add, rinse, repeat, right? We've been really fortunate the past few years. We haven't had to touch that special education reserve. This year, it looks like we may have to touch it for two costs. One is transportation, and the other are the tuitions themselves. If you go down to the very bottom of your budget, you can see the last couple lines. I want to say like 220 something. 231, thank you. 231 and 232 are your two tuition accounts. What we use those for is to pay for tuitions for kiddos who have severe special education needs and ultimately need to have services outside of Carver. Again, those projected costs on your budget are projected as of February when we do our budget process. So when you see your budget column and you see the number for the budget, that's what we thought was going to be the cost in the winter. Through the winter and the summer and the fall, those things fluctuate. Student placements change, student needs change. What typically happens is sometimes students who are projected to be in a collaborative end up needing private services. Sometimes it's vice versa. So that's what you can see in those accounts where you have your collaborative having some additional funds remaining. We'll transfer those up to cover your private costs. But in this case, your private costs are going to outstrip your balance in the collaborative. There's two factors that drive that for you right now. One we talked about in the budget process. The state, through OSD, it's called the Operational Service Division, they essentially help set the prices for these sorts of things. Came in at a 14% increase for private tuitions, for private special education tuitions across the Commonwealth. That's unprecedentedly high. The state, as part of their state budget, approved funding to support towns and communities, but they haven't rolled out a mechanism for us to have that fund. So we're going to roll that negative for now until we get access to those funds in some capacity. The other reason, though, is you just have more tuitions right now. So you do have an increase in total enrollment for students who require these significant services. That's something that you can make an estimate for, but you can't guarantee in any given budget year. We're pretty conservative here every year, but in this year we've got a couple of cases where we just have students that have significant needs. They need those services. Federal law requires that we provide those services. So as I mentioned in transportation, our process will be the same. We'll transfer what you see there, the $221,000 from the collaboratives, up to offset part of that private cost. The remaining cost will stay on your books and we'll continue to roll it through the spring. Any additional funds that you have in your budget at the end of the year, we'll use to offset it. The remainder will go to the Special Education Reserve for the end of this year, and we'll build those costs and those tuitions into your FY25 budget. Gosh, I know that was a lot, but I just wanted to give you like the deep dive and flag it for you so you sort of understood what that looks like in your budget and what that's projecting for through the spring, through the end of your financial FY23 year. Any questions about that?
Do you know what the balance is currently in our sped reserve?
It's a little over $500,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we have a good amount.
You have enough to
Just in
cover it
case.
for
Yep.
sure. So this is not alarm bells by any means, but it is significant. I want to be plain with you about that. That's a significant cost. And so our job internally has been, thinking about what are some ways we can make sure we really tighten the belt here across the district, make sure we really think about prioritizing spending so we have some funding left over at the end of the year to offset that overall cost so we minimize the impact on the sped reserve. That reserve should really be that last line of defense for your community, and we want to maintain it to be that last line of defense.
Right.
One other thing to keep in the back of your mind as we start to think about the budget process coming up the next few months, once you utilize your sped reserve, you'll want to think about, as a community, starting to replenish that sped reserve over time. You don't do it all at once, but every year you try to put some money aside as a community that's part of your town warrant to sort of build that up for future years in case you have a situation like this in the future where needs pop up. But that's sort of foreshadowing for the spring. We're a little bit ahead of ourselves.
Right. Thank you. I wanted that point to be made for those at home that might not be that familiar with that. I think we are very fortunate that we do have that reserve, because I know some other
Absolutely.
districts that do not, who are working towards trying to establish one. So thank you for that information. We appreciate it.
Yeah. And so all I would ask tonight, if you can, would be a motion to approve warrants and grants, and then the transfers. I can give you the transfers if you'd like. They're not anything earth-shattering. And the transfers as presented. Your major transfer there really is, again, just that transfer from your collaborative account to offset part of your special education tuition, non-public, or that 766 special education tuition.
Okay.
I move that we approve the financial report as presented this evening, including acceptance of the warrant, the grants that the district has received, and the budget transfers.
I second.
Excellent. We have a motion and we have a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
you,
Again,
guys.
thank you very much for
Thank you.
your efforts and your staff's efforts. Okay, so that brings us to disposition of materials.
Yep, so we've had a request to recycle our Big Ideas textbooks. So this request was made by the math department. Big Ideas was our 6th to 8th grade middle school textbook series. This year we've begun the implementation of a new math curriculum in grades 6 through 8 called Illustrative. Actually, I don't think we've made a formalized presentation on that, so I was thinking that we should probably make a presentation. I'm looking at it. We should probably make a presentation on Illustrative sometime the next month or so. So we will do that. And ultimately, we're going to try our best to sell these books back to the distributor or sell them to somebody. But we're looking for a motion to,
Okay.
for us to try to dispose of the current, or the old, so I shouldn't say the current, the old 6 through 8 math textbooks called Big Ideas.
I move that the 6th through 8th grade Big Ideas math textbooks be deemed as surplus.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, so we will move forward on trying to sell those off to somebody.
Great.
Or
Thank
have them
you.
used where they can be used and
Yes.
not just recycled.
That would be great. And that brings us to the superintendent's goals.
Right. So each year, as the superintendent, I have to establish 3 goals: a professional practice goal, a district improvement goal, and a student learning goal. So I'll take a moment to share each of the 3 goals with the committee, and we'll be seeking the committee's approval to vote these as my goals for this year. So first, for professional practice, it's a short sentence, so I will read each goal. In order to keep current with initiatives and practices in education, I will participate in a range of professional development opportunities, including joining the Superintendent's Collaborative, as measured by participation in monthly collaborative meetings that provide superintendents across the country, actually, with best practices and resources to improve teaching and learning within their districts. I did attend the first meeting, which was last month. It was actually really inspiring. It's a large group of superintendents from across the United States who on a monthly basis are just going to share ideas and approaches and ways to look at education. It was actually one of the better professional development opportunities that I've attended recently. So I'm excited about joining the group and doing some learning from the group and then bringing that learning back to the alt team. Professional practice, obviously, I should have made references in the beginning, is based on me improving my practice and my leadership within the school district. Want to do all 3 together? Instead of
Sure.
separate? Okay. District improvement goal: in order to foster positive and strong relationships with the community, I'll work with the Director of Marketing and Communication and the administrative leadership team and teachers to effectively communicate around all issues related to the Carver Public Schools, as measured by a range of communications throughout the school year. Obviously, we've begun the implementation of Class Tag. That's a district-wide initiative that we've taken the leadership on. And ultimately, I know that we're always looking to improve our communications and make sure that at all levels, teachers, administrators are effectively communicating with the community so that they know what's happening within the school system, and they understand what's happening. And so communication can always be better. And so I want to have that as be one of my goals, is to continue our process, continue on that path of progress towards improving communication throughout the school district. And then finally, the student learning goal. I think it makes sense that the student learning goal has to be an MCAS goal based on student MCAS performance. So in order to improve the number of students meeting expectations on the MCAS by an average of 10% across all grade levels and subjects, we will construct a district-wide action plan that will address curriculum alignment, instructional practices, student attendance, and students' attitudes and efforts on the test, as measured by spring MCAS scores. Obviously, the measurement here is always a little bit difficult. The school committee has a responsibility to report out my goals, at least in a formative way, before the end of the year. We won't have the MCAS results at the end of the year. We won't have them until next fall. Certainly, we will look at those results then, and we can reflect on the goal as well. And then also, my goals can be 2-year goals. So this can be a goal that can maintain and continue into next year. So I think that obviously is something I would probably look at. And really, we want to really focus on that concept of, we want to move students out of partially meeting expectations into meeting expectations. And we thought that concept of saying 10% across all grade levels, all subjects, if we can make that type of a push, that would be tremendous for the school district. And we, as Christine alluded to, we will present our improvement plan that we've been developing on November 13th in the elementary school.
Great.
So I don't know if there's any questions on the 3 goals, and I make a recommendation that they be approved.
Does anyone have any questions?
I move to approve the superintendent's goals as presented this evening.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
I just want to really quickly say how much I appreciate the consistent branded communication that has continued to grow since Gina's role expanded to include marketing and communications. I just want to say thank you for that. I think we've all heard positive things from the community, including Class Tag. I know there have been some hiccups with it, but I think people are excited that it's something that we're paying attention to. So thank you for all of your efforts. Absolutely. All right then, so.
I actually had a question. Did you highlight to the parents of the students that exceeded expectations that, most of the district only partially met expectation?
I didn't say that in the letter they received. So the letter they received just said, congratulations, you received exceeded expectations. Obviously, when they got their score reports, which everyone received a week ago, I believe,
Yep.
about they'd be able to see that the score report had both the state average of students who scored exceeding and also the district average of students who scored exceeding. So they'd be able to make that comparison. But no, I did not explicitly state it in the letter that I sent them.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I would just, if I bump into any of them, I'm just gonna, let them know that it's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, the scores were outstanding, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for that. All right, then that brings us into some first readings of some policies.
Yep, so we had, the policy subcommittee met last week to look at a couple different policy recommendations that Mask had made. So obviously, we've aligned our policy manual over the last year, really. We got it all done last year with MASC, the Mass Association of School Committees. So our policy manual is as up to date as it's ever been, which is great. It is online also, so it has been linked online to MASC, and it's linked online, obviously through our school district's website, so anybody can go out and see our policies. On a regular basis, MASC reviews their policies to see if some laws have changed or some regulations have changed. And there's actually been the couple changes that occurred along the concept of purchasing. The interesting part is as we were going through this process last year, those purchasing changes were happening, but they weren't there yet to match how we updated our policy. So even though we just voted our policy manual in full in the spring, we're already ready to make a couple possible changes. So there's two recommendations that we're going to look at. The first is the first reading of policy DJ, which is purchasing. The policy subcommittee met on Wednesday, October 18th, to review this recommended change. This one was really small. Talk about a small change.
Super easy.
As it's coming up very slowly. So the change was they eliminated the word, and see, you can see it on the screen, it's in the second to last paragraph. It used to say the superintendent will designate the district's purchasing agent. They will develop and administer the purchasing program. And I think they thought they was confusing, so they wanted to be very clear on who they were.
Yeah.
And asked it that, and said the agent who was identified, designated by the superintendent is the they. So the only change in this policy is to go from they to the agent. Again, there's no action required of this policy. For most of our policies, we do a first reading and a second reading. I don't know if there's any questions about this. I'm assuming there aren't. And we'll bring this back at next meeting for an approval. So if everybody's ready, we'll move on to the next one, which is a little bit more detailed. So this is a first reading of policy DJE, procurement procedures. And interestingly enough, this was a policy that we decided to not align with the MASC template or recommendation. So the policy that is here, our current policy, is actually our own policy, was the school district's own policy that did not align directly with MASC. But MASC came out with their new template, their new recommendation. And Ron looked at that recommendation and said, you know what, in some parts of it, it's actually, he felt there was a better match than the policy we had in place. So we rewrote this a little bit and made it very, really open-ended. Ultimately, the regulations around how the procedures you have to go through for procurement changes based on the dollar value. But the reality is, in realities of inflation, that dollar value often changes. And the state comes out with different recommendations or changes the thresholds in which you have to meet certain type of bidding processes. Whether you can just do a general good faith bids, or whether you have to get 3 written quotes, or whether you have to go through a formalized bidding process. They establish dollar thresholds for that. And in essence, the policy that NASC created aligned the exact dollar amounts with the new current thresholds. And our thought was, and Ron, you can jump on this if you want to, was that we better off having a more generic policy, because anytime those thresholds change, now your policy's out of date. But if you have a generic policy that says your thresholds are always going to be in line with state law and the recommendations of the Attorney General's office, then your policy is always going to be current even when they change those thresholds. And those thresholds, they don't change monthly, but they change every couple of years, because the realities of inflation makes the bidding process more difficult. You know, what was $10,000 20 years ago is certainly not $10,000 today in terms of where it can be spent and how it's procured. So the recommendation we have here is to take the first couple paragraphs from the MASC recommendation and then just adding a generic statement at the end. So what we're recommending as the policy is what's in red here. So all purchase of materials and equipment and all contracts for construction or maintenance will conform to the requirements of the law. Any contract between the district and the vendor is subject to procurement requirements, where the district or another entity completes the purchase. To foster greater efficiency, the district will enter into state and local intergovernmental agreements where appropriate for procurement or for the use of common or shared services. And then this kind of generic statement at the end, the district shall adhere to all public procurement laws and regulations outlined in the Attorney General's manual. So the Attorney General establishes a manual every year of, these are the rules and regulations for the procurement of materials within the state of Massachusetts as a public entity. So we're just saying we will follow the regulations established in that yearly manual. Ron, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this or different recommendations for changes, or?
No, it's really just to add one more item. So when we were having this conversation, in 2022, the state just changed their thresholds. And so Mass came out and said, yep, well, here's the new threshold. But we thought the reflexive language would allow us to be up to date with whatever the newest threshold will be. And the Inspector General and Attorney General sort of put out guidance about this anytime those things change. And there are these big multi-page manuals that we all use anyway to guide our procurement processes. So this would keep us within that language as that language changes and avoid us having to always update our policy whenever they change the threshold.
Anything that saves time.
And again, no action is required on this tonight because it's just the first reading. We'll bring it back on November 13th for a second reading, but certainly this is the opportunity for the committee to give feedback or ask questions about either one of the two policies.
Great, thank you. Okay, so that takes us to reports from the school committee. And then we have one item on the agenda. It's a review of resolutions to be considered by the Massachusetts Association of School Committees at the annual business meeting that will be held this November at their conference down in Hyannis. So I know that not all of these resolutions apply to our district. So I'm not sure how everyone feels about voting the ones that aren't pertinent to our district. Most school committees will vote on all of them. We certainly don't have to do that. It's kind of up to us. If you even want to make a motion to vote on any of them at all, I would be taking however we decide to vote to the delegate assembly, where I will be voting on behalf of Carver School Committee. Just because we vote in support of or do not support something doesn't mean that it would necessarily prevent it from being implemented. We're one of, a wide number of districts who will be reviewing this. And then MASC will take these up and try to work with the legislators to hopefully adopt some legislation to implement some of these changes. And like I said, some of them don't pertain to us. We're very fortunate that we own our own buses, so we don't have to contract out bus services, but not many districts are as fortunate. So does anyone have any thoughts? I know some of them are kind of wordy. There's one that's also about MCAS, which is a little bit different than the resolution that we voted on in support of the Thrive Act, but it's also similar. So does anyone have any thoughts on how they'd like to proceed? Do you want to consider them? Do you want to vote on them?
I don't think we have to vote on ones that are not associated with us unless it helps the greater of the good, but I don't know.
Right, like full stable funding from METCO, the Metropolitan Council for Educational Opportunity is Resolution 1. Resolution 2 is regarding investigations and recommendations for transportation bidding procedures. Again, not something that we particularly deal with as a district. Regional transportation, also something that doesn't specifically pertain to Carver. There's diversity, equity, and inclusion. That's calling for districts to, I believe, hire a staff member, which we would not be able to afford to do at this time, unfortunately. We do have a DEI working group. It is something that the district, I think, is working on incorporating. The Massachusetts School Building Authority. That is to increase funding for certain types of schools.
We only have 2.
So, and then there's School Bus Stop Armed Surveillance Act and enforcement and penalties. We were fortunate enough to obtain a grant and install cameras on all of our buses a number of years ago, so that, again, doesn't pertain to us.
The only piece that would pertain is that it does also ask for stricter enforcement laws.
Yeah, I
Correct.
Yeah, so
like
that-
Yeah.
that one. I
Yeah,
think
so
we
it would
should
be
vote
high,
on.
so it'd be higher fines and
Yep.
for people who pass a school bus that stops.
Yeah, because
I would like to vote on number 6, just
I agree.
because of what I deal with on the daily, where my bus stop is. So I think that's just good practice in general
Okay,
at this point, if we could.
yeah,
If others
absolutely.
agree. Because I do agree that stiffer penalties need to be applied to that, because, again, the things I see on the daily basis on just Forest Street alone. So I would like to, if we could.
Do you want to finish do you want to vote on that now?
No,
or-
no, you can,
Okay.
yeah, we can do it after.
All right, just want to check. And then number 7 is related to MCAS. Again, it's a little bit different than what we voted on, but I do like the fact that it talks about the impact on social, emotional well-being of students that take that. So it's also calling for them to look for a new type of testing. So I would be in favor of supporting that.
I have a question. It said the MASC urges Massachusetts to develop an alternative to the high-stakes MCAS test. Massachusetts has alternative to the MCAS.
I think they're referring to the graduation requirement for sophomores, right, to pass MCAS?
It just says to develop an alternative to the high-stakes MCAS test, and there is one in the state of Massachusetts.
Okay,
It requires a lot more work from the staff and the teachers, but it exists.
I think they're thinking about it like on a more broad level. So I think
Okay.
you're referring to the alternative assessment
Yeah.
that our intensive special needs students would participate in, where they'd have to do a portfolio.
Okay.
So that certainly does exist. I think the goal here on this language is to say, almost elimination of the MCAS exam with an alternative for some other type of
Yep.
assessment process
Okay.
to the whole process.
Got it.
Not just an alternative for specific groups of students.
right, overarching. And then resolution number 8 is safe storage of firearms. And I know that this was brought to them because of some issues that have been happening in some other school districts, and as well as everyone knows across the country in terms of issues with guns in schools. So.
Go
those-
back and go one by one and say,
Yeah.
make the decision of this, does this apply to us? Do you want to vote on this? And then go from there. And if you can certainly ask my opinion how I feel it applies to the district. I'll
Okay.
do my best to answer that.
Great. So resolution 1 is the full stable funding from Metco. Does anyone have any questions, or Mr. Neef, do you have anything that you would like to add to that?
I don't think this directly affects the Carver Public Schools,
Right.
but certainly it's a, issue across the state that you could weigh in if you wanted to, but I don't think it specifically it's not specifically related to the Carver Public Schools.
Right, okay. Then resolution 2 regarding investigations and recommendations for transportation bidding procedures. Like I said, we're fortunate enough to own our own fleet. I know some districts who put their routes out to bid, they're running into an issue where they're only getting one bid back and sometimes none. So I know that's why this was brought.
And again, that doesn't apply to the Carver Public Schools. Either does number 3, regional transportation.
Correct. Correct. So number 4 is diversity, equity, and inclusion. See, the final sentence is, therefore be it resolved that MASC recommends that all districts adopt the position of DEI coordinator to work towards an anti-racist school system, which I wholeheartedly support. I just know that Carver we don't currently have
But
the funding to
should
do
we
that.
vote on that knowing that we can't afford one? Because if they vote it in and then we're forced to afford one, it affects us.
Ultimately, all of these, my opinions,
Yep.
you can sort of weigh on this is the recommendations of the Massachusetts Association of School Committees. They are not binding resolutions.
Correct.
So any vote that MASC takes on any of these resolutions are not specifically binding to the Carver Public Schools. So they're not saying that it doesn't require us to do anything.
Okay.
But ultimately, historically, we've tried to look at the recommendations of MASC. MASC is supposed to be the voice of the school committees of the state of Massachusetts. And certainly, there's going to be times where one region or one type of school system may not agree with, so that the majority votes may not be something that makes sense for them. So there's no expectation to incorporate this resolution. I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other if the committee votes on this issue.
Okay.
I don't think it's unfair for you to acknowledge that, my general sense right now is we would not be putting forward a recommendation in this budget cycle to create a administrative position of DEI coordinator. I just don't think that would be a top priority for the school district, in my opinion. But that doesn't mean you don't think that in concept it's not a valuable thing.
In
Right.
concept, I absolutely think it's valuable. I just, I do think we should vote on
I
that.
think we
one.
should, I
Yeah,
agree.
do.
And one thing I just want to quickly say is I've worked with the chair of Division 10, which is the DEI division of MASC, and they are going to try to work with some legislators to try to get some legislation put into place to potentially offer, some funding to districts to be able to fund this. Because some districts are able to do that, not all are able to, like ours. So I'm hoping that this will be something that if there's a strong response from, that maybe, there'll be some action, and hopefully it will come to fruition where there'll be funding made available by the state or at a federal level to afford districts like ours and others that don't have it in, the means in their budget to hire such a position to be able to do so. Because I think it's important that, everyone feels, right, safe, supported, welcomed, included. So, and like Scott had said, we're not bound by any of these. It's just showing support so that MASC can then go to the legislatures and say, hey, look, we had X amount of, this resolution passed, now they're going to start doing the groundwork to hopefully have some funding put behind it. Okay, so,
5.
But if you want to
Yes.
vote on 4,
we're going to say, do you want to vote on
yes,
4
let's
now?
make a motion and, a motion to support, a motion not to
Yep.
support. or-
Okay. I move to support Resolution 4, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay, and then number 5 is the Mass School Building Authority.
So what I'd weigh in on this one is that obviously, the Carver Public Schools isn't going to be putting a project forward to the MSBA in the near future. Also, the MSBA projects that you'd have, your options are a new school, or what's called an accelerated repair project, which you can replace windows, roofs, boilers, doors. But we just did an accelerated repair project at the middle high school in 2018. At the same time, we built a new school. So we had 2 MSBA projects going on at the same time. And the likelihood that we're going to be involved in an MSBA project in the near future is limited. That being said, ultimately what this resolution is calling for is for the state to lift the cap of 800 million, the amount of money that they can spend on projects throughout the school district. Throughout the Commonwealth.
Yep.
And obviously, if the state is saying they're going to be willing to put more money towards
Yes.
building new schools in general, that would probably be a positive thing.
Okay.
And be a positive thing in the future, whenever our time comes up to move forward and have a project that we would put forward to the MSBA. So though not specifically applicable now, I think long-term it could be.
Right, I don't like the fact that there's a limit at all. I think it should be whatever's available, and they agree to put into that fund. So, would someone like to make a motion?
Sure. I move that we support Resolution 5, MA School Building Authority.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 We already talked about 6 a little bit.
We did talk about 6. I mean, it is something
Good with
that,
6.
right?
Yep.
Okay.
I move that we support Resolution 6, School Bus Stop Arms Surveillance Act and Enforcement and Penalties.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And that brings us to Resolution 7, which is related to MCAS. I would be in favor of supporting this, as it is kind of, it's very similar to what we had voted as a school committee and sent off, so.
Okay. I move that we support Resolution 7 related to MCAS.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
And then we have Resolution 8, safe storage of firearms. And where I do believe that all firearms should be stored safely. I don't want anyone to think that that's not something I'm a fan of. I I just don't see how it would be our school district's responsibility to teach members of our community that, or members of our school district about that. So it says that we're supposed to work with the local law enforcement agencies, health agencies, and nonprofit organizations to collaborate and increase efforts to inform district parents and guardians of their obligations regarding secure storage of firearms in their homes and vehicles. I think it's important. I just don't,
I mean, we teach fire safety. You know what I mean? Like,
Alice drills. and
yeah, we do
that.
all of that. So I feel like this is just an added step to that information, and more information is never harmful.
I tend to agree with that, actually.
do we have anything we don't have anything currently in place?
No, so
Regarding this,
currently,
right? So we would
there's
need to-
there's no specific curriculum. And in my mind, the thought process here is, how I read this is they're actually advocating that I send out messages
Yep.
to parents that they store their guns safely. The language I hear is it urges the superintendent of schools to communicate to families to make sure their weapons are secure. And, give information and training on how to do that. On some level, I agree with Stephanie that I don't know 100% if that is my responsibility to do that, but obviously
Be
some
local
people.
law enforcement.
Yeah.
I think it is. I think if they find out you're not storing your firearm correctly.
And certainly, I don't say
Local law
that from the
enforcement
standpoint that I'm
can be
against the
sending
safe
out
storage of
emails and
weapons.
messages to the community about
Right.
storing fire. I don't think that's really
Yeah.
in the school committee's purview.
Bringing to school is one thing, that's under our purview.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we do have a policy that does,
Yeah,
do,
well,
yeah.
certainly you can.
We do, yeah.
So, I don't, again, on this one also, I don't feel strongly about this from the standpoint of, I certainly support the message. The message being,
So maybe
we
they
should
would
be
raise
encouraging all families who own firearms to secure them safely. I do have a little bit of a concern of it's outside the purview of the role of the superintendent of schools. And again, you could vote in support of this from the concept of, we all agree with the message that those people who have firearms secure them appropriately and safely the way they're supposed to, which I would hope is what's happening for everyone who owns a weapon.
Right.
And, but that doesn't mean you'd have to then task me to actually
Right.
send out that messaging.
right, yeah, it says the superintendent and staff to create an appropriate communication to parents and guardians that explains the importance of secure firearms storage to protect children and teens from unauthorized access to unsecured firearms and illegal obligations consistent with Massachusetts safe storage law.
Yeah, I would encourage that because I don't think it should be our responsibility, but I think due to the current climate and everything that's been happening in the past few years, we kind of have to take on an active role to ensure that our students are not acting unruly with the firearms of their parents because of their parents' irresponsibility. And I mean, it's upsetting and it's really, it's a hard thing to think about, but I think
Scary.
Yeah,
It's-
we have
I
to
mean,
deal with it.
I'm sure like you, I've sat through Alice trainings or like stay in places and it's scary. And it's even scarier when you're a child. So I don't think it's Scott's responsibility to tell the parents, but I do think there is a level of responsibility to the children to help maintain their safety.
I understand that, 100%.
We're just
So-
voting on the resolution, so.
Yeah, and it's
Correct.
not-
It's, we
not beholden
obviously are
to it.
passionate about it, so I think it's something we should probably vote for.
Yeah.
And, I mean, perhaps we could, I don't know, we could come up with, I don't know, maybe
We
there
should
could be,
find, we can find out if the resolution passes
Right.
that.
Yep.
And then you could have.
And then
like,
maybe
the
work
police
on a-
And then we can make
department
a
come in
decision
and
on
do
whether-
it
Tweak it for ourselves.
yep, and work some type of community response and partnership. And maybe. it could be
Right, and
something-
I can also, I could work with local police.
Yeah.
To do something. And then also I could find out what other superintendents are doing.
Yep.
Because obviously if this does pass, I do think that some school committees or some superintendents will be
Yeah.
putting out some messaging.
Right.
Okay.
Okay,
Do we want to?
thank you for everyone's thoughts and input.
I move that we support Resolution 8, safe storage of firearms.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All right. So that is that. I will, I can't believe the conference is in like 2 weeks. It's crazy. So between now and then, if anyone has a chance to look at the sessions that are taking place, if there's anything that you would like me, any materials that you would like me to bring back for you, or if there's anything that you would like to see us professionally, potentially, my apologies, have a presentation done for the school committee as professional development or for the district, please do let me know. I will certainly bring back as much material as I can overall to share with everyone. It's going to be 3 days of learning and hearing stories and challenges and successes, and hopefully having the opportunity to bring some best practices back to Carver and gain some more insight into some of these resolutions. So I will absolutely do my best to represent while I am there. I know Jackie is also attending, so I'm sure we can both report back to what it's like. I think it will be a great conference. It has some really good messaging this year. And with that, does anyone have anything they'd like to add?
I just want to make a comment because this weekend was actually a big weekend for Carver sports, both high school and elementary. I just want to talk about Senior Night at the high school, and the Hull game was fantastic. I mean, it was really an enjoyable event. Nice to see us honoring our seniors, and it was a good game. It was a short game, actually. I was surprised. We only got over there for a few minutes. Congratulations to the golf team, too, and all of the teams that are going to playoffs. I believe volleyball is as well.
It's not official.
Not officially yet.
I feel like they have to finish out their season, but right now, if the season ended today, they would be eligible.
Oh, excellent.
And we'll know at the end of the week. And so the state tournament will start next week.
Oh, fantastic. So I just want to say congratulations to all of them. Also, the Carver Youth Football, the Cowboys, all of the teams made it to the Super Bowl. And Carver Youth Cheer, all 4 of our competitive teams placed and are heading to regionals. We got 3 seconds and a first.
So excited.
It was absolutely crazy. So it was a good weekend. So congratulations to the 74 athletes that participated in the cheer competition, all of our Cowboys who played football this weekend, all of our high school athletes. Great job. I really see an upswing this year on our sports, and I'm pretty pleased, actually. I think most of the community is.
Yeah.
So based on the attendance at the games, it's great.
It's good.
So congratulations to everybody.
Excellent. Yeah. It's great to talk about so many fun accomplishments, exciting accomplishments. Anyone else have anything they'd like to add? I just want to say thank you to everyone who joined us this evening. It was great to see so many families here. It's always excellent when we have this room filled for happy things. So thank you to everyone that was here. Thank you to everyone that presented. And please don't pass the school buses. Please be patient. I know it takes a little while. I got stuck behind 2 this morning. It's okay. Just listen to a song. And everyone stay safe. And happy Halloween. Happy Halloween. It's almost that time. So with that, if no one has anything else to add, if someone would like to make a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn the 10/23/23 school committee meeting at 8:48 p.m.
I second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Until next time.